Welcome. I'm Teresa Reed, your host for Aging for Life, recording today in my home studio again. Our topic today is how we elders can help save the planet by introducing children to nature through nature play. Obviously, despite the best efforts of many national and international organizations, we baby boomers have presided over a galloping environmental catastrophe that threatens all life on the planet. And we may be contributing to national and international organizations that are trying to stem the tide, and we may be doing small things ourselves, like turning down the thermostat and recycling and food composting and all kinds of things, reusing and all kinds of things to try to stop what's happening. All of which are effective and virtuous and not joy-filled. It's kind of grim sometimes. My guest today, Dave Bauer, has some joy-filled ways for us to help save the planet by introducing children in our lives to nature play, to love for the planet by getting out in nature. So Dave Bauer is an environmental educator who's been teaching for more than 30 years. He's the author of What's Under That Rock, Papa, which is a book based on a picture book based on his adventures with his grandchildren. And he's also the founder of the coaching organization called The Change Circle. I'm so glad he could join us today. Dave Bauer, welcome to Aging for Life. I'm so happy to have you here.
It's lovely to be here with you, Teresa. It's a real gift, and I look forward to an engaging conversation.
Oh, me too. So tell us what the problem is here. You're an expert in getting kids out in nature. What's the problem? Why do we need to do that?
So I guess there's several little components to the problem, but the problem is when children spend time in nature, we have very little problem. The problem is we're not remembering to get children in unstructured play in nature, as you, Terry, Teresa, you had often when you were growing up. I had often when I was growing up.
Right.
Media and these kinds of devices are kind of putting big roadblocks in terms of everyday nature immersion.
Yeah.
So all you got.
Wait a minute. Dave, what do you mean nature aversion?
Well, nature aversion is where, regrettably, if you forget to spend a little time in nature, you begin to almost fear it. You begin to think it's all bugs and it's all mosquitoes and it's all viruses and it's all like scary stuff.
And dirty.
Yeah, and in fact, there's much research that shows something as simple as a child playing in dirt actually boosts the children's immune system remarkably. We just need to remember that spending time in nature is precious, and it is the grandparents, it is the aunts and uncles who did this as children, who are likely to be the leaders. We'll talk more about this in our conversation today. It may not be the parents themselves because the parents grew up with the devices, so we may need to show modeling from the elders and the older folks in our societies for the comfort it is to get back in nature.
Okay, also, don't you think that parents are often just too busy?
Parents are very busy. They're very burdened, and they sometimes think they have to do the right thing, and some of the things that they think are right are not so right. For example, you don't want a child over-programmed. You want a child to have unstructured time in their day. You don't want to be running around the child into soccer and all these organized things. So a little bit of is wonderful, but regrettably, I've heard parents brag about, oh, my kid is booked from the moment they get out of bed until the moment they get in bed, and that's not the kind of thing we really want for a child to be healthy.
You know what that is? That's so sad, because that's really an imposition of the adult sense that if you're busy, you're important onto a child. Yeah. And that's terrible. That's the last thing kids need.
Exactly. I agree.
Yeah. Also, there's that sense of the competition, and you have to be super programmed in order to beat everybody else. And that also is might have something to do with the increase in depression and anxiety among kids.
What we know, we can talk a little bit about benefits. We'll probably touch this topic frequently, but
Absolutely, yeah.
let's start with a light immersion in benefits. When a child or an adult spends a little bit of unstructured time in nature, we find that their psychological drama and their frenzy quiets down. We notice their blood pressure goes down. We notice heart rates go down.
Wow.
We notice immune function goes up. And we notice that people become more kind and gentle first with themselves, and they become more kind and gentle with all life around them. These are pretty significant benefits for the human species.
How have those effects been measured?
How are those measured? Well, that's a great question. That's really not my expertise. We're going to have to save that for a little research I'll do. All I know is that there are organizations who do the metrics. Children in Nature Network is one of them.
Okay.
The Natural Learning Institute is another of them that do the metrics, and they have the deep research to support it. I simply read the executive summaries. I'm not in there doing the metrics.
Okay, all right. So we know, because of research that's been done by a number of organizations and academics, that there are very significant benefits to immersion in nature, right?
Oh, yeah. And we're only touching on a few, given the time we have. I'm sure we'll stumble upon others as we have our conversation.
Yeah. So something, we've talked about individual benefits of nature play or nature immersion. And, in terms of blood pressure, in terms of cognitive function, in terms of physical health and emotional health, that's a lot of benefit. And, there's also hopefully the benefit of getting kids to fall in love with nature and the planet.
E.O. Wilson, a name that many listeners will have heard before, is probably the guru rock star that's still alive today. E.O. Wilson knew long ago in a principle that he tried to remind us of called biophilia, the love for the bio, and the love for life. This is genetic imprinting. All organisms have.
Interesting.
We are organisms on this planet. And regrettably, we've risen to such a pinnacle of influence without knowing the biophilia that the other organisms never abandon.
Yeah.
We regrettably have taken our influence, and it's a bit dark on the planet today. The UN report came out yesterday showing that over 1 million species, this is a big number, over 1 million species will go extinct, not endangered, extinct very soon. Now, we've known that there's been high extinction rates in past geologic times. This time, it is the human organism that's catalyzing the extinction. So I don't want to get dark. I don't want to be dark. I want to be light and bright and uplifting, because there are many things that people are doing, and there are many things we can talk about today that are the right things to do.
Yes. Well, the darkness is something that I think all of us struggle with on a daily basis. It's terrifying, and it's heartbreaking what we've done to the planet, and all out of greed. And so, well, some ignorance, mostly greed. And but that's one reason I wanted to talk with you, because sometimes we can feel really helpless. How can we do anything about this? And I think that your idea of introducing children to the natural world and instilling a love of the natural world in children is just, it's one of the few joyful things that we can do in response to this looming cataclysm.
So you and I had the pleasure of being very close with each other at the last Saging Conference last October.
Mm-hmm.
Stepped outside with me, and we did unstructured play on a cloudier day.
Yeah.
You guys lit up. We lit up despite the drizzle that was going on, because what we know is that when we spend as little as 10 minutes, preferably a half hour, minimally a half hour, you want to get a child outside for about 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week. Now that sounds crazy, because you had hours outside a week. I had many hours outside a week. But minimally, if someone said, if I was going to create a really low bar, what is a bar to start for? 30-minute episodes at least 3 to 5 times a week. You're at least on a good track. Now, what are you doing as the adult? You're not naming things. You are not trying to be the tree expert. If you get anxious around an ant or a bug or a bee flies by, you try to breathe a little bit because the child will notice if you freak out.
Yeah.
I have a 2-year-old granddaughter, Charlotte, who when I popped open the compost piles, many of us know, are where you put your organic kitchen material, and the worms come. You don't bring them, they come, they show up, and they eat it. They make the next batch of soil. Little Charlotte reached right down into the warm compost, held up this murky, dark compost, oozing with worms. Oh, Papa, look at these. No fear. No fear on this young child's part. Now, that doesn't mean you have to pick it up. You as the adult simply have to be able to go ooh and ah with the child's wonder. If you can just ooh and ah, they will lead you to some really remarkable stuff.
Yeah.
The gift of nature play is not to lead the child. The trick is let the child lead you.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a really important do, right?
Yeah.
A very important, if you're a list of do's and don'ts, one
Yes.
really important do is to let the child lead.
Let the child lead as often as possible. If they start jumping into a river that's too fast, of course you stop. Of course you stop.
Don't let the kid drown themselves. Good
but
point.
Simply follow the child. Listen to what do they hear anything? What are they hearing? You ask questions like, do you hear anything? What do you see? What are you seeing? Or notice what they're seeing. Hey, do you smell anything? What are you smelling? Sometimes they'll smell things you won't because their sense of smell and hearing and sight is acutely different and up and amplified compared to ours. A child will bring something that we call landscape consciousness into the outdoors. They'll walk outside and immediately sense all of it. They will listen, they will smell, they will look at the broad, big, am I safe here? Is this an okay place for me to be? The adult might notice the clouds coming from the distance, spotlight consciousness.
Okay.
The adult often brings something that could be fearful. Spotlight consciousness is not always fearful. The spotlight consciousness could be the ant crawling across the sidewalk. It could be the worm that the child is holding. So spotlight, like a spotlight, narrow. Lantern, big, broad, the ambient environment. We've kind of lost that as grown-ups, as adults. So the gift that a child brings us is if you spend a little time with the child, they will remind you what is it like to walk into a space and be able to be in a lantern-like consciousness.
Yeah.
A real gift for us because we get quieter, our blood pressure diminishes, our respiration rate goes down when we take a lantern consciousness approach.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thought. And I have a little woods near me, and recently I've been doing mindful walking in the woods, and it's been such an interesting experience to go from walking, like power walking for exercise, all the time that I'm thinking about what I need to do and planning, to trying to do mindful walking.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's so different. The mindful walking time is different. Time is way slower and fuller when I'm trying to do the mindful walking or doing the mindful walking because I'm actually doing it. And it just feels so good.
So you've gifted yourself with that wisdom. One of the neat things that children do for us is they gift us with their wisdom. They have remarkable wisdom that they haven't lost.
Yeah.
So, in the book, What's Under That Rock, Papa, the title of the book that I've written, you will find page after page of everyday play, not that we made up. Sri and Kai, my grandchildren, created these episodes. I observed them and I thought, this is just too cool. I've got to tell the story. So it's 85, 90% of these pages literally happen at these children's exploration and wonder. It's their book.
That's beautiful. That's so your grandchildren, you just took fantastic inspiration from them.
Well, absolutely. I wouldn't be on this call right now if it wasn't for Sri and Kai. I tell them all the time, this career that I'm doing as this creative nature play nerd guy, this work I do is all from them. They gifted me.
Wow.
I would not be on this call if it weren't for the children.
Wow. That's beautiful. That's really that is a wonderful gift from them.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Let's talk for just a sec about the difference between being outside in creative nature play and being in front of your device.
Okay.
I mean, just how, I mean, as even just as we're talking about it, I get such a sense of, the sense and all of the sensory information that's coming at us from every direction when we're outside and having fun, or just even not having fun, maybe even just like, just like wrapped against the blizzard, but it's so alive. Every single thing is alive versus on the screen when you're just in this little tiny universe.
Spotlight. Yeah. Spotlight.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And how much time in general are kids spending online today?
You really want me to? So this is dark. This is a bit depressing.
Okay.
So children spend about 7 hours a day in front of interacting with something like a device that has a screen. 7 hours. Let's compare that to the amount of time the research gurus have found. How much time are they spending in nature, outdoors, outside of a human-built thing? 7 minutes.
Wow.
7 minutes compared to 7 hours.
Wow.
It is no wonder that very few people on the planet understand nature anymore. You need time to develop the neural pathways to appreciate nature. 7 minutes compared to 7 hours, you're going to have a lot of neural pathways on how to do screens, for sure. Yeah. You're going to get very few neural pathways on how to do nature.
Right. And you know what? And I use a lot of electronic media as well as you. And if we're talking through electronic media right now. And so not to, diss electronic media or think, oh my gosh, it's ruining our minds. I don't think that at all. It enables such incredible communication and learning that has not been available before. So I want to be clear about that, because it's not just like screens bad, nature good. Right. But it's just that it's a very different set of neural pathways.
That's correct. And the balance is a little bit out of balance. 7 minutes, 7 hours.
Right.
What if we could get just a little bit closer with those two numbers?
Maybe 3 hours, 3 hours. That would be awesome. The really important impact, many, as you've already pointed out, but in my view, one of the huge ones is that when kids are disconnected from nature, they're not going to feel, by definition, they're not going to feel connected with nature and at one with nature. And they're going to, the imperative to protect the natural world isn't going to feel so much like an imperative. It's going to be more abstracted.
Yeah. Yeah. Cognitively, we're never going to save this planet. We're not going to save it cognitively.
Right.
We're going to save it because of the remembering we get of our interconnected and interreliance on all life on the planet. There's a gentleman by the name of Scott Sampson that does a wonderful job. He's written a book, and even if you don't have a child, How to Raise a Wild Child. Oh my gosh, this is a gift to a grown-up to read this. It's so simple, and it just reminds us of how easy is it? We're not talking Tarzan. We're talking just a child that begins to feel comfortable in nature. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that, Dave. Teresa, I don't know how to do that. If you pick up a book like this, you'll be reminded how easy it is. It really is quite easy to do it.
And two things arise from the last few minutes, and then we have to end. But one is, you said even if you don't have a child, you don't have to be the parent to do this or the grandparent to do this. It can be any neighbor kid or niece or nephew, or if you're a teacher, one of your kids, but you can have the ability to do this with any child whose parents will trust you with their kid outside, right?
Yes, yes. Just be curious, be filled with wonder yourself. Watch a child in nature. They will teach you what is it like to be in nature again. Notice how comfortable many of them feel, because they organically will feel comfortable unless they've been in the presence of an adult that has scared them to be scared of something in nature.
Yeah.
Could be hopeful. This call that we're doing today is a sign of really good, tangible hope.
I hope so. I really do. And then another thing I want to get to, and that I always am thinking about when we're having these conversations about aging and the role of older people and all of this conversation, is that I'm very acutely aware that much of the conversation is around wealthy white people
Mm-hmm.
getting older.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, both of us, you and I both I have a large yard. I have a park nearby. I live in a small town that has a lot of open space. And, I'm just so aware of the fact of our privilege,
Mm-hmm.
and of the fact that lots and lots and lots of kids and parents are growing up in much more high pressure situations with lots less ready access to the natural world.
So
Let's talk about that for a sec.
So we could get on a committee that's outside our neighborhood. If our neighborhood is white and empowered and green, we could look for an urban committee as an elder to join. And we could simply say, I'd like to join your board, your committee, and I'd like to create more green space. I'd like to do whatever you're doing. Do a search on the internet. What's near me that's trying to uplift those that are disenfranchised in urban settings.
Yeah.
And if your love is nature, there are plenty of opportunities to bring children to join a boys club, to join a girls club, and say, we're going to the park. We're going. There's nothing in your way unless you fictitiously put it there. So we can help those that have been less than fairly treated remember what those moments can be like by just joining a group that exists. We don't have to start anything new.
No, we don't need any. No, we don't need new nonprofits. God knows there are plenty of beautiful nonprofits out there.
Find one that needs a little help, a little financial support, and join.
Right. I guess I'm also thinking that maybe this is just a kind of a liberal fantasy. I don't know, but that there are always cracks in the sidewalk. There are always where plants are coming through, and ants, and nature and green life has a strong will, and it's always there somewhere, right? Even right now, because as we know, change of the kind you're talking about can take forever, or decades or years anyway, and the little kids who are there right now can't really wait. So I'm feeling like I'm wanting to hear that, or believe that it's still possible.
It's absolutely still possible, and you make it way more possible by doing instead of fretting. If you catch yourself fretting, you're right, then it isn't very possible. But take one action a day, one small action a day, make that your goal, and those little actions throughout the planet will catalyze. They will exponentially do the mathematics. The mathematics will show up again in our favor, in the species' favor, in the children's favor.
I love your hopefulness, and I hope that you are right in it.
I feel very confident. I'm a science nerd, so I kind of know we can take things down fast, and things can come up remarkably fast if we get our ducks in a row, if we get focused and clear.
That's great. Dave, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time talking to me, and also for all the work that you're doing to help reconnect kids with nature, and to help educate elders in how to do that, how to be instrumental in saving the planet one child at a time. Thank you.
Thank you for your wisdom and your open heart, because it's people like you that make this. The mathematics kicks in a lot better when we get together. So thank you for making this possible.
Thanks, Dave. I hope to talk to you again soon.
You too. Be well.
Thank you. You too.